Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
The Daily Compliance News for July 21, 2023, the Who Will Become CEO edition. And we begin with that story from the Financial Times, which posits that you can only learn how to be a CEO by being a CEO. I would add you to answer the question of who would be a good CEO. Well, you make them CEO and see if they can run the company. So, not a very good way for selection, so you have to look deeply into people's past to see if they have the character, wherewithal, makeup, and integrity to be a CEO. I once heard James Baker ask the question, how do you tell if somebody will be a good president? And his response was, you elect him president and then find out. Pretty much the same for a CEO. Next up, from Al Jazeera, Sri Lanka passes an anti-corruption bill as a part of an IMF bailout plan. It's the first time an IMF program has been linked to such a measure in Asia, and it's certainly a welcome addition to IMF bailouts. The bill was passed with amendments. Nevertheless, anything to help the international scourge of bribery and corruption is certainly welcome, even if the company is not very enthusiastic about moving into the law of nations going forward. Next up from the New York Times, in the story of banks behaving badly, number 458, Deutsche Bank is fined yet again for moving too slowly to fix its problems with its AML controls that regulators flagged as far back as 2015 and indeed in 2017. In accompanying statement, it said, quote, Deutsche Bank has made insufficient remedial progress. In finding the bank, the Fed issued new orders which required Deutsche Bank to prioritize completions of the controls it was supposed to have put in place under prior orders. Given the history of Deutsche Bank, you have to wonder if they are ever going to have a culture which will meet the requirements and obligations that they agree to. And our final story today comes to us from Reuters, which reports that ex-Panamanian President Ricardo Martinelli was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for money laundering. While he stated his innocence, he was found guilty by a court and claimed, of course, the Trump defense that I was convicted out of political interest. But yet another corrupt politician is convicted of bribery and corruption. We can only hope that that will start to happen in the United States. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.